Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Redford, and this is the follow-up. Coming up on tonight's show, with many voters saying they are less than enthused by a rematch between President Biden and former President Trump. Is this the year a third-party candidate rises to the top? Delta College political science professor Ryan Petersen is here with his perspective. He and I will also talk about the number of state ballot cases challenging whether Mr. Trump's efforts to overturn his 2020 election defeat make him ineligible to hold the presidency again. Is this a real threat to your democracy? Plus, a Bay City man is leading a national effort to recruit live kidney donors to save countless lives of children in need. But first, we have viewer feedback from last week's show here on the follow-up, where we talked about the Tittabawassee River disaster and the plan to rebuild and restore the dams and the lakes. We have this comment from YouTube, Dan Mott. This dam failure was the direct result of the state and federal government ignoring deficiency for decades. Now the state and federal government are hiding from their responsibilities. We have another comment from email. The past dam owners file bankruptcy and can't pay his part owed, but the property owners can just pick up the tab. These are public lakes for anyone to use, including the homeowners, but I do not see the public paying for any of it. And finally, another comment from YouTube. Each county makes $5 million in revenue from the lakes each year. These lakes are public. The whole state uses them, yet homeowners who have already lost everything have to pay for it. I can smell the lawsuits in the air. Well, thanks for your comments, and we'd like to hear from more of you to help drive the conversation here on the show. You can do that in a variety of ways via social media on Facebook. You can email us. You can make your comments on YouTube. You can dial into the follow-up hotline to voice your opinion or suggest future show topics. And finally, if you want to watch any of our past shows this season, just log on to deltapublicmedia.org. Now for tonight's guest, first guest, Ryan Petersen, Delta College political science professor, a regular on the follow-up, and we're glad to have you back again.
Glad to be back. Thank you.
So let's jump right in. As I said at the beginning of the show, hardly anybody wants to see a rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and yet, as of today, it looks like we're going down that road. Mm-hmm. And maybe because of that, there's been kind of a rise in people that saying they're independent voters. According to recent polls, compared to the last presidential election in 2020, 43% of people, compared to 39% in 2020, say that they're independents. And so some of the folks that say they're Republican and Democrat are coming over to the independent side. So what do you sort of make of that? Is it because they don't want to see a rematch, or they're just kind of, it's so divisive they don't want to connect to either party?
Yes, all of the above, right? I think that there is I think there's just a lot of frustration with both of the two major parties right now. I think that there are a lot of people who really did not want to see a rematch, would like to see, frankly, different people on both sides of the election, and this is kind of not where people want to be, and there was already a trend. You saw a rise in independence sort of even before this, so we were already headed in that direction, and I think maybe this has just increased the pace.
They've been talking about RFK Jr. is in, Joe Manchin is sort of on the fence, and then you hear a little bit about this no labels political movement that they kind of say they're more centrist, more moderate, more bipartisan, and their goal is to get on the presidential ballot on all 50 states. They're on 12 states. Right. They don't have a candidate yet, but could they be viable?
Potentially. I mean, the deck is stacked against any kind of independent or third-party run. We've seen this time and time again, but every so often in American history, the window opens just a crack, and I think opens up the possibility that somebody could potentially succeed with an independent or a third-party run. And I kind of feel like we're at one of those moments in time right now, that if you had the right candidate, if they had enough backing, enough money, enough logistical support, a group like No Labels, you could potentially see this happening. we were talking before the show about Ross Perot. Ross Perot ended up, with a significant percentage of the popular vote, no electoral votes, but that was after dropping out of the race, deciding at the last minute to get back in. He was an eccentric character, shall we say. Had he been a little less eccentric, I think '92 was one of those years where somebody else might have actually been able to win that election. And certainly they can alter the outcome.
Right. And Ralph Nader was another one that had run a couple times with the Green Party. And I was doing some research today. Third-party candidates have impacted the outcome of just 4 presidential elections since 1900, and I think that Ross Perot was one. I think Teddy Roosevelt was another one. But so there is some history that they can affect the outcome.
Yeah, and I mean that's a more typical example, right? But I think we're in really unusual times right now. And so if you had a group like No Labels, if they put together something like a unity ticket, I'm thinking back to like the 1800s, where you have somebody from both parties on the ticket as running mates. If you had a moderate Republican, a moderate Democrat, if they were big names, and they had the kind of financial backing that you would need to be able to get on the ballot in all 50 states, maybe it would be. Again, I'm not saying this is likely, not saying it's going to happen, but it is possible in a way that in most years it would just not.
Well, we've got about 272 days to the election in November, so we'll see how this all plays out. Okay, going to shift gears, but sort of stay in this area. There are a number of states that have removed former President Trump from their primary/caucus ballots, citing his actions leading up to the January 6th, 21 insurrection. The fact he's been contesting the results of the 2020 presidential election, hasn't been convicted of anything. We have a map here that shows, there's 2 states, Colorado and Maine right now. You had a Secretary of State in one state and I think an Attorney General in another that took him off. Other states are challenging it or looking at it. It may end up in the Supreme Court. So what do you make of that sort of these states arbitrarily are just sort of removing somebody from a ballot? What's stopping them from saying, well, we're going to put somebody else on the ballot?
Right. I'm skeptical that the Supreme Court's going to uphold any of that. Personally, I think, regardless of what you think about Trump, whether or not you think he engaged in insurrection, in the absence of a criminal conviction on a closely related charge, or at the very least, I think maybe an overt act, right? You take an oath to the Confederacy, that's a pretty overt act. In the absence of something like that, I find it problematic for a state Secretary of State or a single state trial court judge or even a state Supreme Court to remove him from the ballot. So I think probably you'll see the Supreme Court overturning that. It is possible, that they'll come at it from the other way, though. If somebody, for example, was not a natural-born citizen, and that was clearly demonstrable, provable, would anybody have a problem if a Secretary of State removed him from the ballot? If they were required to be 35 years old or 21 years old, depending on what office we're talking about, and they weren't, and they were removed from the ballot, nobody would think twice about that. That would simply be a Secretary of State doing their job. If there was a challenge and a court upheld it, no big deal. This is a little different, though. We're going back to the 14th Amendment, the Civil War era. The 14th Amendment is not super specific about how this is to be proven or who is to judge this. There's no other authorizing legislation from Congress. So again, my own sense is that probably he's going to be put back on the ballot.
One had like a mock trial, and then what if that same Secretary of State, even the Supreme Court said, no, he's on the ballot there, and then they have some results, and then she goes back and said, well, we're not going to justify these results. And it's just a slippery slope.
There's a degree of subjectivity here that just doesn't exist, I think, with those other examples that that I gave: age, citizenship status, that sort of thing. And so I think that's the problem, really.
Right. So let's go to one other area, and we're staying on this presidential election vein because it's so interesting and there's so many twists and turns. So back to Haley a little bit, former UN ambassador, former South Carolina governor. She's staying in the race for the GOP nomination despite overwhelming odds. Early primary caucus results. She's lost badly to Trump in Iowa, lost badly to him in New Hampshire, although she made some inroads there. South Carolina's coming up here in a couple weeks. She was a popular governor there, but she's not polling there.
No.
The question becomes how long. She has a lot of apparently deep deep-pocketed, wealthy donors that are saying, I still think she needs to stay in it.
Right. Again, we're in extremely unusual circumstances right now. There is a not zero chance that Donald Trump will be convicted of one or more felonies before the election, and I do think that part of her logic might be trying to hang on a little bit longer than would ordinarily be the case, and I think maybe this is why donors are still willing to back her in case something happens, right? It is possible that Trump's candidacy, however unlikely, I mean, people have thought this was going to happen more times than I can count now, and it hasn't.
Right.
But it is possible that something so big would happen that candidacy will implode, and the Republican Party is going to need somebody else. And if she's the only one left standing, there you go. So I mean, I think that could be part of it. Possible she's trying to set herself up as a for a third-party run, an independent run, maybe as one of the candidates for no labels. That's certainly a possibility as well. I don't think this is the case given the tack she's recently taken, but it's also possible to some extent that she is trying to get as much support as she can, which would give her leverage and maybe negotiate for the number 2 spot with Trump. Who knows?
Which is possible, right? And Trump has the ardent supporters, and they're just like pressuring her, please get out. But I think you make a good case. I mean, just today, a couple of his court cases related to granting him immunity. It's failed, so he's failing every step of the way. And I think a lot of his reporters see this as a smokescreen. The Democrats, it's another witch hunt. But some of this is really real stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And Super Tuesday's still about a month away. So my feeling is she's going to stick around at least until then to see how that plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think we have to keep in mind, right, that only a few 100,000 people have cast a ballot in this election. I mean, we're talking about what over a little over 100,000 in Iowa, a little over 300,000 in New Hampshire, if I have my numbers right.
Yeah.
To say that it's a foregone conclusion, or to wonder why somebody's still in the race when far less than 1% of the electorate has cast a ballot for anyone.
Right.
How did we get to this point where it seems strange that she's still in it, right?
That's exactly.
So I think, at least until Super Tuesday. And again, has these possible other side goals beyond actually securing the Republican nomination. So.
Always great to have you on, and we're still early in this presidential election year, so I know I'm going to have you back on it and kick it around some more and see if you're the prognosticator on this. So,
all right.
Thanks for coming in, man.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you.
So as you step out, I'm going to bring Brian Martindale in. Got that big high wide shot so we can see you walking off and Brian coming in. Brian is the executive director of Kidneys for Kids, so sit down, take a seat. Ryan's got the seat all warmed up for you, and let's have at it. So,
thank you, Mike.
You're on a mission.
I'm on a mission.
To find live kidney donors for children in need.
Yes.
You're from Bay City, so tell us about that.
Well, this all goes back to 2010. Long story short, my son and I had started a small clothing brand in Bay City, just t-shirts and hoodies that promoted kindness, unity, and equality. In 2010, it started to attract the attention from some musicians, friends of mine in rock, that started to wear the shirts in performance. I was asked to performance one night in Bay City to meet a band. Their drummer was wearing one of the shirts, and lo and behold, I was introduced to a young man, one of their biggest fans, who needed a kidney transplant. I had never been acquainted to anybody who had kidney disease, let alone needed a kidney transplant. I was introduced to Brent for the sake of raising money for Brent. The band liked the shirts, and they thought, why couldn't we put something together with our logo, their logo, and use it to raise money for Brent? Because to get in a transplant program, you have to be able to make multiple appointments, you have to keep them, and he was going to be traveling to the University of Michigan, 100 miles each way. So this was our mission, to assist him, first of all. And after getting to know him for about 6 months and seeing what somebody goes through in dialysis, having a port in your arm to be connected to your dialysis 3 times a week, seeing Brent having his moved around in 6 months 3 different times in surgeries, it just made me see, what he was going through, and I had learned about a living kidney donation and learned that even though I didn't match him in blood type, I could donate to somebody else in what's called a pair donation and get him what's called a voucher and get him credit to be moved to the front of the list and receive the next kidney that matched him. So that was my mission to start with. And I tested and matched or passed my test to be able to donate to him. But he became medically ineligible within a year after that I tested. And we remained friends, and he told me, you know, if you saw somebody you could help today, because it's going to be years before I'm requalified, please go ahead and do that. So 2012 rolls around, and this little brand I have, I teamed up with radio personality Johnny Burke from WHNN at the time, and we opened this small shop next to Allen Shoes in downtown Bay City. And I had construction experience, so I built out the store. And on the last day, I ran out of chewing gum. Thank God I'd stopped cigarette smoking a few years before, and I chewed a lot of gum. So I walked to the party store where our police station is on 3rd Street, and there's a newspaper, the Bay City Times, and on the cover there's this little girl. She's 10 years old, and she's in this princess outfit, and they'd had this benefit for her and to raise money, and she needed a kidney transplant. And in the story, it had an A+ blood type.
We have her on the screen there, yep.
Yep, and so I knew reading the story as to start, I matched her in blood type, which is the first factor to be able to donate directly. And from there, you're tested to match in tissue and a few other factors. And the closer you match in each factor, the better chance that person can receive your kidney without rejection and keep it for a long period. So I tested and found out I was a 1 in a million match, as they said. We matched as if we were siblings.
My goodness.
We had never met, and we had lived 4 blocks apart at the time. So I said I would go ahead with the surgery. I stayed anonymous. And it was kind of surreal. A couple weeks before we were introduced in November that year, she had found out, actually at the end of November, she had found out the day before Thanksgiving that she had a donor, but she didn't know who. And there was a benefit at the Prime Event Center for her, and her mother were there, and I attended selling my clothing to benefit her. And standing behind her all night, knowing I was the donor.
Oh my goodness.
And then them not knowing was a surreal moment, to say the least. But 2 weeks later, we were introduced by a friend of mine who worked for CNN at the time. She wanted to do a documentary on kidney donation. And she asked permission, could I be the one to introduce you and make it public that you're going to be the donor, for the sake of educating people. And so we were introduced on air in this little documentary called Transplant. And the second time we met was when we rode together in a donated limousine down to the University of Michigan for our surgeries. And January 11th of 2013, she received my kidney. So it's been 11 years this year. She's 21 years old now. She attends Eastern Michigan University, and she is on our board of directors for now the nonprofit that I'm the executive director of, called Kidneys for Kids.
Wow, and how's she doing, and how are you doing?
Oh, she is
since
just
doing that.
She is glowing. She's as tall as me now. She's in perfect health. She's shown no signs of rejection over 11 years. She's advocated with me in television stories for others who need kidney transplants. And like I say, she's working on our board to, we're working to further, you know, living kidney donation for children and as well as adults. We work with adults in Michigan and children nationwide.
So tell us about this car trip, this nationwide car trip you took, and then you're going to do sort of another one, right?
Yes.
Too? So talk about that.
Well, during COVID, by trade, I'm a journeyman painter. And I went through 2 shoulder surgeries and was going to be no longer able to physically go back to my job. And I had wanted for years to do something besides. I was a peer mentor, and I am for the University of Michigan for a number of years. I take somebody through the process of becoming a living kidney donor. So I wanted to do more than that. And so I had this time on my hands, and my wife and I talked about it. And if it not for her and allowing me to commit money to forming this nonprofit, I wouldn't be here today. But the first idea in 2022 was just to take a car trip and nationally advocate for children and adults. And the idea was I was visiting National Kidney Foundation offices, holding interviews to promote living kidney donation. Well, lo and behold, I was contacted personally by a couple mothers, both in Virginia, who had children. And they said, Brian, would you consider including our children in this story? We've seen what you're doing already on this car trip. And the second part I took to Virginia, and the one story, little boy Cooper Pfaff, whose mother, Casey, is now the vice president of our board of directors. His story got on CBS, their station, and it was circulated by 30 other stations across the country. And that set off a chain or paired kidney donation. And that paired kidney donation became a chain in which 5 people received kidneys instead of 1. And then another person that had saw the story became a liver donor to a little boy in Maryland. So hearing those results made me and my wife fully commit to forming the nonprofit Kidneys for Kids. And the mission is, the initial goal was to find 100 kidney donors for 100 children. And you know, it sounded like a simple goal up front, but you realize you have to reach basically 5 million people to find 100 kidney donors, because only 1 out of 50,000 people will ever become a living kidney donor during their lifetime. So the idea was driving from city to city, and last year I drove 7,000 miles thanks to Garber Chevrolet. They donated a car for the summer, which I was able to drive, and I arranged TV interviews in cities for a family with a child needing a kidney transplant. And getting that exposure in the children on TV and being able to tell adults about a big fact is adults can't fathom that they, as a full-size person, can donate to a child as young as 2. And because they see these stories and they say, well, how can I help this baby that Brian's with? Well, yes, depending on the size and weight, it's usually an average of 2 years old, a child can receive a full-size kidney because it's placed in the stomach pouch. Just like Jess, when she got my kidney at 10, my kidney still sits right there and always will. So you can save, you know, a life of a child, and you can do it from anywhere in the country. If you see one of these stories in California, you could go through a pair donation program, like through National Kidney Registry, for example. They're the largest facilitator of living kidney donations or living donations in the country. And you could donate to maybe a boy or a child you saw a story from California through this paired program. So last year was like 7,000 miles, and the stories have produced 10 living kidney donations so far to children. We know of a dozen people who are registered today who are testing for different children in the United States. And I'll continue this summer. I'll leave in May, and this time I'm planning 12,000 miles, 30 cities. And we're including, we've got a proposal in front of Major League Baseball to make this a little bigger. Since I'm throwing out a first pitch when I get back with the Great Lakes Loons, there will be a Kidneys for Kids night, ladies and gentlemen, on August 11th.
August 11th. Put it down your calendar.
Yep,
Right.
and it'll be a special first pitch like you've never seen anywhere else. But I'm proposing to do this with 10 major league teams across the country, and each one will include a family with a child on the field, story playing on the scoreboard, and bringing exposure to that child's story and the fact, you know, that you can help a child anywhere in the country, and that there are almost 2,000 children who need a kidney today, and almost 10,000 more on dialysis who probably will need a kidney in the future.
So what are the questions you get from some people, like me, for instance, if I said, boy, I have some reservations, do I really, what's going to be the impact, the health effects of me giving up a kidney?
Right.
I don't know if that's one of the questions that you get. It'd be an obvious question, I guess, right?
And that's my part in these interviews. You know, I just turned 62. I gave at 51. And I've experienced no complications. I run around with the energy of a 30-year-old. You know, the last years I was a journeyman painter. I was still running with apprentices that were less than half my age, and I took great pride in running them in the ground on a daily basis. But it was just, you know, I use that as an example to show that, you know, you can do this. People have donated well into their 70s and live a totally normal life with one kidney. Your kidney remaining takes over the function of that second kidney. Nothing changes in your life. I still do all the same things I did with 2 kidneys with 1. I run with my 5 and 10-year-old grandchildren as much as I can.
Good.
You know, my lovely wife and I are able to do all we can together, even with her disability, to help these children and you know, carry on the Kidneys for Kids mission. And then the other part of our mission I didn't get to is we give financial assistance to families for costs not covered by insurance. And
how does that work? So if people are watching today, if they want either register or support it, how do they go about doing that?
Well, you'd go to the Kidneys for Kids website, kidneysforkids.org. And if you're a family with a child, or you can be an adult in Michigan, and you're going through transplant or going through cost of treatment like dialysis, which aren't covered by insurance, we'll supplement those costs up to $1,000 per year. You'll find a grant form at kidneysforkids.org, and we can start the process right there of assisting you.
So aside from the second car trip you're taking, I know you have a local event coming up that you want to talk about. I want to get that in for
I appreciate that. Yeah, a big announcement as far as a local event by Kidneys for Kids. This is going to be the first annual Kidneys for Kids Bay County Health Screening Fair. It's a free health screening fair that will be on Sunday, May 19th. It'll take place at the Bay City Town Center, formerly the Bay City Mall. And it'll include providers like the McLaren Foundation. They'll be doing screenings for adults. Great Lakes Bay Health Centers, they'll be doing screenings for children. They'll also be talking to people and doing if possible dental screenings. Anything they can do in efficiency on site, they will do there. Other than that, they will schedule people out for anything they might have in medical needs for children and adults, dental needs. Bay Area Behavioral Health would be there, Bay Area ISD, the Women's Center of Bay County. We're asking your organization to attend also. But any civic organization, if you already haven't been approached and you're watching tonight, we'd love to have you there. If you're doing something that benefits the residents of Bay County and especially to their health care, we'd love to have you attend. This will be held in the space where Payless Shoes used to be. Bay Metro Transit, they're celebrating their 50th year this year. It just so happened I rode the bus the very first day 50 years ago that they were in service. And part of the celebration is going to be providing free bus service for that day for every resident in Bay County that wants to attend this event.
You have a lot going on. I don't know when you sleep, but it's a great cause.
Thank you.
If you want more information, we have the website on the screen, which is
kidneysforkids.org.
And that'll give you the information how to register, how to support these kids, how to be a live kidney donor. You'll have information on the events, the car trip, everything. A powerful story, and you're saving lives, Brian. Thank you so much for
Thank you for having me there. And everybody can support our mission there with a tax-deductible donation at kidneysforkids.org. Thank you so much, Mike.
You bet. And that's our show for tonight, but be sure to join us again next Tuesday night. The focus that night is on AI, artificial intelligence, the impact it's having now, both good and not so good, and what the future holds with AI. In the meantime, hit me up on social media or dial into our follow-up hotline. We'd really like to hear from you. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great night. I'll see you back here next Tuesday night.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And make sure to click that bell icon to stay notified when we upload new content. Videos like this are only possible because of viewers like you. To help support this channel, click on the link in the description below. We'll see you next time.